Well, with that, we will get started. So welcome all of you. Kelsey, thank you so much for being here today and being willing to be quizzed a little about your amazing Library of Things collection. So first off, I was
Absolutely.
wondering if you would tell us a little bit about your library and the people you serve and kind of how this came to be. Did you just one day decide to have a collection like this, or was it more gradual?
Sure. It was sort of gradual. For those of you who don't know, I work for Richland Library, which is in Columbia, South Carolina. We are, I guess, a mid-sized sort of library system. Um, we have 13 locations, and our population base is, I think, like 400,000 total. So it's not a huge place, but it's not a small place either by any means. I specifically work at the downtown location, and we are definitely solidly an urban library. Um, Not as big as some that I've visited, but we're pretty in the hip. And we lucked out in that we have a little bit more control over our funding than a lot of libraries. So we get to do fun things without having to ask permission before we do them, which allows us to do things like the library things and kind of get that moving, right? So I am the library things manager. I've been in my position for almost exactly a year now. Um, I think it was actually December 13th of last year that I got stolen into collections development, but I work in our collections development department. Um, and so I am in charge of the library things on a system-wide basis.
Got it.
Um, my previous position was the assistant manager for our studio services department, which has our pilot location for the library thing. So I was assistant manager for the department and kind of the site administrator for our pilot location for a really long time. Previous to that, I was our makerspace coordinator for our Fiberworks department, or for our Fiberworks makerspace. And that is kind of how we evolved, right? Is that in 2015, Richland Library got a bond referendum to renovate all of our 13 locations. And we actually opened an extra location in that bond referendum. But in our renovations, we opened a studio services department, which was makerspaces.
Got it.
So we're now up to 5 makerspaces, and they all have a coordinator, and I lucked out to be one of them, and I kind of started our fiber arts makerspace, our which we called Fiberworks, right? And so we worked for a couple of years in these makerspaces, and we realized that a lot of our customer bases wanted to take home the tools that they had access to in the makerspaces, but we had no way of getting those tools to them in our current, like, how we loan things, right? Um, and so my predecessor as the assistant manager of studio services, also named Kelsey Trueluck. Ironic that we have two Kelseys in the whole system. We sat right next to each other. But so
Oh,
she actually started the library thing. She got 2 grants to start the library things. We got the Google Impact Challenge and the Libraries Build Business grants. And those are what we used to start the original collection and to subscribe to my turn. Hi, Jean. Interesting to be in a meeting with you. I've been working with Gene for 4 years, and I've never been in a meeting with him before. Um, so True Luck won the bond referendum, and basically what we started doing, or sorry, True Luck won the grants, and basically what we started doing was iterating equipment that we had in our maker spaces, because we knew that that's what people wanted, right? And because our grants were very entrepreneurial based, we were restricted to making sure that everything that we bought had an entrepreneurial spin to it, right? It was something
got it.
that someone could, like, go and build a business with, right? Libraries build business. So we got, like, cameras and sewing machines and anything that we could think of that someone might use to do some sort of business. I mean, not anything, but that's kind of how we started. So of our
Oh,
maker spaces, we have a woodworking one, a media arts one with a post-production editing lab. Then we have Fiberworks, and we now have a fabrication studio that has much higher level woodworking equipment.
I'm
So we
wicked
had,
jealous. If you haven't
sorry,
taken a look at I said I'm wicked jealous. If you folks haven't taken a look at this, it's worth the time to take a look at what you can see at these maker spaces online.
and feel free to come visit. We love giving tours. So we had like woodworking tools, and we had media art stuff, and we had fiberwork stuff, and then I also started a seed library in that time frame, and so we decided to also have gardening tools so that someone, because we're a college town as well, so we figured that somebody could, run like a summer landscaping business out of it, right? So we sort of kind of grew the collection small like that. And we started the collection in 2019. This was before we had my turn. And we started it really, really small in 2019. And then the pandemic hit and we had to shut down. Right. And that gave us time to kind of ideate and figure things out. And that's when we realized that we wanted my turn. We wanted a system that could give us um, date specific reservations. Right. So you can't do that with a regular ILS. And when we reopened in October of 2020 and kind of relaunched our collection, right? And it went crazy from that point on. We then integrated our seed library into it in spring of 2021, and that exploded our checkouts. And we've kind of grown since then. So then in late 2021, we started getting approached by other locations within our system that wanted to also have a library of things. So we added our secondary location in late 2021, and then added a few more. No, I'm sorry, in early 2022 is when we added Valentine. And then we added another one later that year. And we kind of started slowly creeping out into the system. And by that time, I had been taken over as the assistant manager, and the directors approached me about expanding to the entire like system wide, making this a system wide collection, something that was huge. So we started working on our expansion plan, and I was kind of like project manager of it at that point. So then in 2023, we realized that it was entirely too much to project manage this entire collection and the expansion and assistant manage the department, and run the library of things at Maine, which I'm sure a lot of you know what it feels like to have way too many hats on. But that's when we decided to actually make this an official position, and I became the library of things manager and was pulled into collections development and made into what I am now, right? So I'm a system-wide person. And so right now, basically every location, as we slowly expand, we expand every 3 months to a new location, and every location has a site administrator who runs their small collection. And then I sit in my little cave, really, here at our main location, and I process everything, and I look at the collection from a system-wide perspective, making sure that it's cohesive, doing all the training so that it's cohesive, and making sure that everything runs smoothly and soundly, and that um, that it functions the way that it should, and there's consistency across the board. Whereas, so I'm no longer running the day-to-day stuff. And in 2022, we decided to start funding it from collections funding. That's another important point that happened. So our grants ended in late 2022, and collections development decided to fund us out of our collections funding. And that's how we fund now, is that every year I have my own budget lines, and I get to spend a certain amount of money to maintain equipment and buy new equipment, and expand to more branches. And we should be through our expansion in spring of 2026
Wow.
at our
Wow.
current
What a
pace.
journey, but actually pretty fast for like everything you have done and accomplished. I would not have expected that quick of an answer. So way to go.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. I also
Yeah.
had a baby in there.
Oh my God, well, congratulations. No mean feat. Yeah. I
Yeah,
feel like sometimes those go hand in hand. I had a baby when I
yeah.
first started a tool library, so I feel yeah. Yeah. Um, Amazing. Well, wow. Okay, so does anyone have any questions here? I have plenty, so don't worry if you don't. We're gonna keep talking. But please don't hesitate to jump in and query Kelsey for yourself. All right, well, I'm just gonna keep, oh, what is your annual budget specifically for your library of things, I bet?
So last year it was cumulative, I think 37,000.
Nice. Wow.
And this year it's slightly smaller because I ended up not using my entire budget last year, which don't do it, use all of your budget.
Yeah.
I think I'm at 35 this year.
Wow. And so you can kind of expect that for, and that's just for collections? Like,
Yes,
okay.
that, yeah, well, that is for, so we break it into three categories. We have our circulating equipment budget, which is the majority of that. And then we have our library thing supplies, which is like replacement parts and pieces. And that's how we fund the seeds is out of library thing supplies. And then we have what we call a non-consumables or a non-returnables budget. We used to call it consumables, which are things that we supply with the kits that we expect to get used. So like our lamination kits go out with 10 lamination sheets. So those lamination sheets are purchased out of non-returnables budget. But when you all those up, it's about 35,000.
So that's interesting. So you've said a few things, and I think what we learned through this series is there's like no right or wrong way to do library of things, right? And that there's just
No.
so diverse. We talked to Ann Arbor, they had like a $66,000 budget. And then we've talked to people who are like, what, a budget? What are you talking about? We just have donated items, like $50, you know? So it's been really interesting on that. So you say you do send out consumables then, so
Mhm.
laminating sheets and things. Has that worked out for you? Has it, or have you run into troubles?
No, it's worked out very well. So we've
Okay.
learned that some things should have consumables and shouldn't have consumables, but the majority of things that we do send consumables with, it works out. And we tell customers ahead of time, you're going to get 10 buttons worth of supplies, and anything beyond that you need to buy for yourself.
Right.
So we give them just enough to like test the equipment and make sure that they want to do it.
Yeah.
And then they have to supply anything beyond that.
Do you tell them where they can get it? Or do you just, they have to figure that out for themselves?
So certain things we do when it's very important that they're using like a certain quality of item with
Mm-hmm.
the piece, but like lamination sheets or laminate, I mean, like we buy like Amazon basics. So, that's just kind of like you get whatever you need. And with the button maker, it's like we tell you what size to buy, but not a very specific one.
Totally. So what is your staffing like to maintain this collect, I guess, and how large is your collection? I guess, do you have a number of items that you know?
Yes, that was one of my statistics that I wrote down today.
Because I think that informs like the number of staffers too, I think.
Yes. So we are currently at 6 locations.
Mm-hmm.
We are about to launch. Yeah, we're about to launch our seventh location. Um, and we currently have 480 items in the collection. We are using like 950 item records, but almost half of those are seeds because the seeds also check out through the library of things. And so realistically, we have 480 items that actually circulate.
And are those unique items or or some of those are repeat items? So,
Um, some of those are different manifestations of the same thing, but so like we have 5 circulating tillers, we have probably 6 circulating pressure washers.
mhm.
But the vast majority are individuals.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought when I was looking.
Mhm.
So for staffing for that then, so 400, 500 items,
Mhm.
did you had to add, other than yourself, did you really have to add additional staffing, or is it mostly done by kind of traditional roles in the library and you just kind of cross-trained people?
It's done by traditional roles that are cross-trained. So within the collections development department, I get support through the
Mhm.
other 12 people in collections development, but I am the one who primarily processes everything. Um, and then at the actual location. So our main location has an entire department that is not dedicated specifically to library things, but library things is like a solid third of what that department does, right? So it's the studio services department. So that department runs our meeting spaces, runs our maker spaces, and then runs the library of things. They have 17 people in that department.
Wow.
It's also the largest collection. Maine itself has like 250 of the 400 items, right? They also have by far the largest seed library. It's an entire card catalog of seeds. It's huge. Um, and then the other locations they're very cross-trained, where each location is going to have a dedicated site administrator, where that work is, I mean, a smaller location, they're probably putting in, I don't know, maybe 4 or 6 hours of work a week,
Yeah.
whereas some of the more used collections, Ballantine is probably the second collection that gets used besides Maine, and that Kristen probably puts in, again, probably a third of her time is spent on the library of things. So every location has a dedicated site administrator. One location has like an entire department that does it, and then most of the smaller locations have what we call a core team that is either it's like 2 to 6 people who dedicate like probably 3 shifts a week to it. So it's
Yeah.
definitely cross trained. They're not, this isn't the only thing that they do. It's cross training of regular associates, clerks, librarians, that kind of stuff. But they put in a good amount of staff hours.
So on that note, how did
Mhm.
that come to be? Did you buy people presents? Did you get them library of things items they wanted? Or was everyone just like, yeah, we want to do this and we're so in and there was no grumbling whatsoever?
The vast majority of people, it's staff buy-in, they want to do it.
Cool,
Most of the branches that currently have library of things asked to have library of things.
cool.
Um, as we expand, it's going everywhere. So now it's like you get to do it whether you want to or not. It is
Yeah,
mandated by the directors. But realistically, as far as I know, I've only ever had 2 staff members who didn't want to do it
yeah,
out of everybody. And we have like 400 staff members, probably not that high, but it's very close. 2 out of 400 is not bad. Most people want to do it. And I don't have to bribe anybody. They want to work on this collection. They think it's pretty cool. Um, and it's like something new and exciting that's different. So they just
yeah,
kind of want to participate in that. And I'm also somebody who, like, if you don't want to be on the library of things, I'm not going to make you be on the library of things. If you don't want to be on my
right.
project, I don't want you on my project, you know? Um, and so it's never really been pulling teeth because there's always somebody who wants to do it. And if you don't want to do it at your location, for the most part, it gets assigned to somebody else and you don't have to do it. I mean, you might have to like help a customer make a reservation, but how is that different than helping a customer put a book on hold?
Right, right. Well, in a way, it almost is, right? Because for you, and let's see if I understood this right. So for your kits, or for your library of things, right, they're more like museum passes in the sense they have a specific date that you can reserve them for and a specific time that they can be returned for, which my understanding, most
Yes.
libraries, you don't do that for books, right? Where
No.
you can reserve it for, so you're only doing that for things.
Yes.
And you do that for every single one of your things?
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, some of it, if it's checked in and it doesn't have a reservation and somebody wants it, they can walk up and check it out like they
totally.
would a book, but they have to return it on a specific time. They get that 1 week with that item, and
Yeah,
that's all they're going to get with that item.
yeah,
But the vast majority, it's date-based reservations, and that's what our customers want.
yep.
And from what I hear from other people, that's what other systems want as well. Because if you, and it, we had originally went that way for the entrepreneurial bit. If you need a camera because your job is photographing a wedding, you need to know that you will have that camera at that wedding. You can't just have it on hold and hope that you get the thing that you need when you need it. If you're throwing a birthday party and you need all these yard games, you need to know that you're going to have them during that birthday party, right? So that's why the date specific is so important. And everything in the library of things, except for the seeds, um, can be reserved date specific. But if it's checked in, we'll let you check it out as long as you meet the criteria for checkouts.
So cool. Okay, so we've got some great questions popping up here that I'm going to keep
Sure.
asking you.
Cool.
But this is super helpful. I'm trying to just pull out some of the things that have been like throughout this series of like, oh, though that was a question this had. How is this different? And on that note of having the dates to check out, a lot of times folks I'd heard of like say there was I don't remember if you have a telescope or not, but like
We do.
everyone wants it for the certain amount of time. Is there do you let them, reserve it 2 years in advance for this
No.
thing, or do you have a certain amount of time they can reserve it in advance?
We let them reserve 90 days in advance.
Okay.
And that is because if we have an issue, we don't want 2 years worth of customers that we have to contact and say, hey, this item is no longer available
Yeah.
and we are not repurchasing it.
Okay.
Um, Now, the things kind of like with books, when your hold ratio gets too high, you're like, maybe I should buy another one of those, right? So
Mhm.
the things that are iterated within the system are iterated because they're popular. So almost every location has a telescope because the telescopes are very popular. And
Mhm.
so we just anything that is popular, we tend to iterate anything that, and if customers are like, hey, I've been trying to reserve this and I can't, can you go ahead and get another one? I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So what about, let's talk a little bit about the things. What are the most popular items to check out at your library?
The most popular items by far are seeds. When you actually look at statistics, seeds are by far, but then again, I mean, it's hard to beat something where you can check out 10 at a time when you're checking out, statistically. Um,
Yeah.
so the seeds are by far and large blow everything else out of the water. Besides that, if you're looking at actual items, the most popular have been the. I'm actually going to answer this question in two parts.
Yeah.
Individually, the tillers, the pressure washers, the cameras,
Yep.
by far the most popular. Categorically, however, fiber
Mhm.
arts tools and yard games, and then yard tools are the most popular. So if you look at them, and again, statistics can get skewed. We have six tillers, so obviously six tillers are going to be really popular. They're still popular individually, but they're going to beat out crickets because we only have three. But if you look at actual categories of items, it's fiber arts tools, so sewing machines. Those go like hotcakes, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's yard tool or yard games, and then the yard tools.
Yeah. I would concur even at our library, which for the record is much, much smaller than yours. We serve a population of 25,000 people in our region. Yeah, so a little different. But still similar. It's interesting how the categories can be similar. Um, So you have some really cool stuff. But before I get, I've got questions on it, because I was like, well, hey, they're doing it, can we too? And so now my boss says, all right, Hazel, ask them these questions. Um,
Okay.
but first off, Jody had a really good question too, which is saw your online photos of your lot collection. Do your lot items also get displayed in the respective branches? And if so, what techniques do you use to display them? Like, do you have your power washer out with your yard games in the window, or, how does that
No.
work?
So we don't really display the items. We do have one location whose customer basis is not super tech savvy. So what they've done is they basically printed out pictures of everything and have like a flip book that people can go through. But when it comes to actually displaying, the only place that they're like even mildly on display is at Maine, and it's because the room they're housed in has glass doors.
Yeah.
But we do not display our items. We don't put them out for the public to touch at all because if you haven't signed that waiver, I'm not letting you touch something that could take a toe off. Um, and so it's a safety thing first off, and then it's also like a loss prevention. Some of these items are very expensive. Um, and so we have to keep them under lock and key because they are so expensive. Um, so we don't really display. We do have like blog posts where we'll use the items and we'll take pictures and that kind of stuff. So there's like digital displays that we do, but we
Yeah.
don't do any physical displays. And honestly, I don't feel like we really need to,
Yeah,
because the collection is so popular. Like, it'd be hard to display something because it would get checked out immediately. Like we wouldn't be able to actually keep a display fresh.
that makes a
Um,
lot of sense.
yeah, so and we have had a lot of like news people come in and film stuff. And so that's another way to kind of display items.
Mhm.
Um, and then people see us hauling them through the library. I mean, they see me throwing a ladder over my head constantly, so they know that there's a ladder there. Um, but we don't really do any kind of displays.
No, that's great. So speaking of, because you have all these branches and things, and I'm assuming you probably send books to each other's branches, does the ladder get to go to other branches, or you have to pick it up at the branch it's stored at?
At this point, the collection does not float between locations.
Okay.
Um, Honestly, it would be a logistical nightmare with the
Yeah.
date specific reservations. I have not figured out how in the world we would do date specific reservations and float the collection. That being said, my boss really wants us to have some sort of floating collection. Um,
All right, Jean, there you go. Hear that?
that I'm just,
Oh, wait,
I'm just,
I'll jump in briefly. So we do have buffer days, including transfer buffers. So
mhm.
if something is being picked up at its not home branch, you could, so we can chat offline. I won't go into details here, but we do have libraries that are
Yeah,
doing um, floating items, and then you can have, and I know in your case, you're going to have some that can float the things that would fit in. Usually it's a courier bin. If it doesn't fit in the bin, it doesn't go, or if it's something that you don't really want to be moving a lot. And so you can set some things float, some things don't. Yeah. So
The next
we
thing
we
is gonna
we,
have
we
a
can have both.
TARDIS where you can put the ladder in and it's bigger on the inside than on the than
You
what we
got it.
see on the outside, right? That'd be great. For
Yeah.
those of you
But
who
it
don't
does.
know Jean, Jean is the one who's manages and designed the software that Kelly uses at Richland called My Turn.
I'll say I have a
10 out of
team
10, do
that does
recommend.
that. Oh,
Yeah,
thank you. So yes, but it definitely does add complexity to
yeah.
have them float. So for sure.
Yeah, it's there in the software by all means. I'm not saying that that it's not. It's a possibility. It's my nightmare of logistics, and then figuring out how in the world we would transit them when our vans are already, stuffed full.
Well, and that is, I think, a real concern, at least for books here. They have to be a certain thing that has to fit in a bin. So you can like sneak them in if you're like, if it's the size of a book and it fits in the bin and it's not round. But then you can't do it for other items.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So to answer the original question, each location's collection only checks out and returns from that location.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so then what about you're getting compliments here too. Amazing. I'm taking screenshots of your things. Awesome. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if you can see the hearts and things, but just in case. So
If you ever want advice on what I think works and hasn't worked out for us, please reach out. I am happy to tell you not to buy certain things.
okay, well, why
Okay.
don't we go right there? Because that is one of our questions actually, which is like, what are some core, that's one of my questions I like to ask people is like, what did you mess up on? Like, what are your mistakes? What shouldn't we do? What have been real successes?
The Sunjo tillers have been a fantastic success. I
Okay,
do recommend those. Those have lived up to their circulation and do very well for just a small home garden.
yeah,
Um, we have, when we are purchasing equipment, one thing that we always, well, two things that we always look at are maintenance on it. If we can actually do the maintenance in house, we don't do, I mean, occasionally we do, like, we have this one guy that does our sewing machines all in one go. I could do it, but why not support a local business? But for the most part, if we cannot maintain the equipment ourselves, we don't buy it. Um, and then safety is another issue, is like if we think that even though we have people sign a waiver, I'm not really comfortable circulating a chainsaw. There's certain things that hit those criteria. So we always look at those. But then looking at failures is I now know to go for the most durable item possible. something that will actually live up to circulation. And in doing so, I end up buying much higher quality than most people think. So, and that's something that I actually argue with my site admins, as they'll be like, hey, can you buy me this thing? And I'm like, yeah, but instead of buying you that $200 thing, I'm going to buy you this $800 thing that will actually live up to circulation, right? So like our demolition hammer, so the person who requested our demolition hammer, it was like a really low ball one, and I was like, no, I'm going to go ahead and spend $1,000 on that, right? Because I wanted something that would actually like live up to the circulation. And yeah, Jean just commented on pressure washers. Pressure washers have been a massive failure.
Oh, really?
So yes, they are extremely popular. And the lesson that I have learned with pressure washers is buy a much, 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 much higher quality one. We are currently buying one that is available through Uline. And the biggest thing that we have learned with pressure washers is you want a pressure washer that has, if it has a soap dispersal method, you want that soap dispersal method to hit the water after it goes through the engine.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
Because so
of
we were
course.
originally buying like the Sunjo pressure washer, and it had like this the soap canisters then went through the body of it before it came out the hose and through the gun, right? Our
Mhm.
current one, the water goes through the body and comes out the gun, and the soap actually gets put in like right at the tip of the gun, right?
Yeah,
And the reason that we do that is because it's not cost prohibitive, but like size and space and weight and whatnot, we couldn't do like a professional one that actually has like metal internal pieces. So the
yeah,
ones that we have to have plastic internal pieces. And companies love to put bleach in pressure washer fluid, and it eats pressure washers alive if it
right.
actually goes through the body. Um, and so that's been a huge thing, is that we have switched what pressure washers we use. And even the ones that we use do have points of failure from usage. They just get used and used and used and used and used. And customers love to not read the manuals and then use things wrong.
Yep.
Even though they're signing a waiver that says that they're going to read the manuals. And so there is some points of failure that happen anyway, but we get much more circulation out of things if that soap hits way later and they're not putting bleach through the system that corrodes the system. Like I've even had one of my earliest interactions when I was like just like a light bulb moment of I need to buy a different pressure washer is this lady called me and she said, I have your pressure washer and it's not working, and I'm on the phone with their customer service department. And I was like, thank you, you just voided our waiver. Um, and I and it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. And so I tried to troubleshoot it with her and we couldn't figure it out. And I was like, all right, bring it back and we'll see if we can figure out what happened. And she brought it back and it was obviously corroded, right? It
Yeah,
obviously had bleach put through it. And so I said, hi,
yeah.
this looks like you put bleach through it. That's why it didn't work. In the future, please don't put bleach through things. And she was like, I didn't put bleach through things. And I was like, pretty sure you did. Um, and she said, no, I just use pressure washer soap. And I said, okay, can you tell me what pressure washer soap you used? And so she sent it to me and I was like, ma'am, this has bleach in it. And she said, no, it doesn't have bleach in it. And I said, this is the chemical name for bleach. And she was like, and so they'll just buy something because it says pressure washer fluid, right? So, and we, you know, and so you have to kind of figure out how the customer is going to use something and then make sure that you buy an item that is durable enough to actually um, get through some circulations. So then other failures have been do not get carpet cleaners. Don't do it. They're very popular. They are so gross. And I am solidly sure that it is some sort of biohazard, like problem for my. After a while, I was like, I don't know what's in this water.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be vacuuming blood out of their carpets. I don't know. So I'm not going to make my staff clean it. And people love to return the carpet cleaners not clean. So there's no carpet cleaners. Every single type of mulcher that I have ever tried to circulate has um, been very broken. I mean, just utterly destroyed by customers. That's been a big failure. I would also classify cameras and laptops as failures because they don't come back.
Yeah, we've
Uh,
done that too.
So we have decided to no longer buy them, period, point blank. Like what we have in the collection is what we have in the collection. And once they die, they die. Now I'll buy like lens kits, stuff that goes with cameras. I'll buy those kind of things because those tend to come back, but the cameras themselves do not come back. Laptops had a good run. They stopped coming back after a while. I'm trying to think of any other.
I mean, that's all great info right there. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure
think that's
you're gonna
it.
come up with 10 things after we close this down, but hey, that right there is
Yeah.
genius. On the notes of repair, are you repairing these items yourself for the most part when they come back and are broken, or do you have a repair person who you can go to? And are you tracking what fails? So to your point, I think, as
Yes.
more and more of us do this, we could be like, okay, you guys, this would be a really great product. If this one thing you could just give us the fix it part for, and then we could just keep it fixing it over and over and over again.
Yeah. So it's a shared effort of repairing things. Because we have a makerspace department, we have a lot of people on staff that can repair things. So like the
Mhm.
gentleman who runs our fabrication studio has fabricated like new legs and new parts for pieces that I need parts for that I can't buy that part for.
Awesome.
I do a tiny bit of small engine repair, not to the point where I would be worried that it would like that I would be potentially putting somebody in danger, but like I'll repair our sewing machines.
Yeah,
Something that I'm comfortable with repairing, something that's not gonna like damage someone.
yeah.
Um, I wouldn't repair a tiller engine, but I will replace a tiller blade, And so there are
Yeah.
some things that I cannot find parts for. And there are some things, if I can find the part, I'm gonna buy the part and I'm gonna replace it.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a tiller engine, in which case that guy has died. Um, the item has died. No one has died.
Yeah.
The tiller is done.
Yeah.
Um, but for the most part, if we can buy the piece, we'll buy the piece and we'll replace it. If it comes to it where like it's done, we're gonna just decommission it out of the collection.
Yeah.
Um, and we do have people on staff like we can repair our own bags. We can do a decent amount of repairs ourselves. And we are lucky in that. And then the only thing that I have found that I can actually send in for warranty and
Mhm.
repair for actual manufacturers are the cameras and the media arts equipment, which are designed to be used by multiple people, like in not designed, but they are intended to be used by multiple people. A lot of cameras are sold knowing that this is going to go to like a marketing department where there's going to be a bunch of people who use them. Whereas when I buy a pressure washer, I immediately void the liability or the warranty by circulating it. So I can't send things in for warranty unless they come to me broken in the first place.
Got it.
Um, so if it's like a repair like that, cameras are the only thing that I can really like send in to do anything. But if I can repair it ourselves, we repair it ourselves. And we can do a decent amount and we can like fabricate little bits and bobs that we don't have that we can't buy online. We have 3D printed some pieces. And Brenton has definitely fabricated some stuff for me on a regular basis. And yes, we do track what goes wrong. In my
Yeah.
turn, I'm literally pointing to where Gene is on my screen. In my turn, you can track maintenance and say what went wrong and look at the history of an item. And we actually find for our liability, we have to do maintenance in between each checkout. Like we are legally obligated to make sure that an item is functional in between checkouts, or else we void our liability. So we inspect them absolutely every time they come back in and do maintenance and record absolutely every kind of maintenance that happens. That way, if the next customer gets it and they say, no, this was broken when I got it, I have a log that says, no, it was functional.
So, on that note, do you have kind of like a checklist you go through for every item? Okay.
Mhm. Yes,
So
we
you
have.
actually,
In my turn, see, I'm a walking advertisement, Gene. In my turn, you can have maintenance plans. And so I write maintenance plans based on the like manuals.
Mhm.
So there's a general maintenance plan of you check it against the inventory sheet. So you check it for completeness, you check the kit for completeness, you check the kit for cleanliness, you check the kit for functionality.
Okay.
And then beyond that, if it has cables, you check the cables. If it has plugs, you check the plugs. If it has, this, that, and the other thing, you're going to check this, that, and the other thing. And then for very specific things, like the pressure washer has a very specific maintenance plan. So the tiller has a very specific maintenance plan. The embroidery machine has a very specific maintenance plan. So certain things will get very nuanced on. And then so all fiber arts tools are under one maintenance plan. All, yard tools are under one maintenance plan, that kind of stuff, to make sure that we do everything. Tents have to be pupped in between each checkout to make sure that they don't get moldy, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
So who's doing that? Is like your circulation staff checking it when they comes in and they're pumping the tent or things, or does it go to
Yeah.
the tool
The core
library?
team.
Okay.
The core team that actually runs that library thing. So when something comes back, the staff member at the desk will check it in and put it on the return shelf. And then the next day, the very first shift, they will go and inspect all those items and make sure that they are whole, functional, and clean. And they'll be the one pumping the tent. They'd be the one checking. They'd be the one cleaning all the roots off the tiller if they got returned with roots on it, that kind of stuff.
Got it. And do you charge a cleaning fee if you have naughty
Yes.
humans? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow, such good information. Okay, I gotta watch time because I can keep you here all day. You got other
I
stuff.
could be here all day.
You got I'm trying to make this go viral, guys. Seaweed saute is what instead of fish to fry, you got other seaweed to saute, except I don't know if you can do, but it works in Maine. It works in Maine. Okay, so one person asked Helen, a good question. How do patrons need to know how to use the tools before they sign the waiver and check it out? For example, the power washer or the sewing machine.
In the waiver, when they sign the waiver, they are stating that they either know how to use the equipment or will learn how to use the equipment before using the equipment. They are stating that they are going to read the manual before they use the equipment. If they don't do that, I'm none the wiser, but they signed a liability waiver that says that they were going to.
Have you ever had troubles with humans hurting themselves?
I mean, of course. Things like the lady with the pressure washer and the bleach.
Yeah.
She signed stating that she was going to read the manual. The manual clearly said, don't put bleach through this. There was a sticker on it that says clearly don't put bleach through it. I mean, there was like 4 different warnings that say don't put bleach through this. She bypassed all of them and still put bleach through it. So human nature is human nature. It's going to happen. We have so far not had any major issues with customers outside of the pressure washer, and my yard dethatcher didn't survive its first circulation, which still grinds my gears. But typically when that happens, we then have grounds to stand on for charging somebody for that equipment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But
So you've spoken a bunch about liability. It's really interesting because you based on other humans and other libraries, obviously they got different legal advice, and as we all will, right? Because we're all in different states and countries and all sorts of things. So I want a demolition hammer and a ladder and flotation devices. Those all sound really good to me. But did you have any liability qualms with your person, or they were like, no, as long as you're checking for functionality, you're fine?
Correct. As long as we check for functionality, we are legally fine.
You're legally fine. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And what do people
and
use
we're checking it out to an adult.
Yeah, got it. Okay. What do people use the demolition hammer for?
So far, as far as I know, it has been used to take up a tile floor. It has been used to repair a fence, and it has been used to pull up a brick patio.
Okay. I gave some good examples very similar to that for my boss. We'll see. We'll see. So, and some of these are kind of really cool, and I have no idea if they would be used. So, like your photogrammetry kit or a mold press. What is and a hearing loop? Those are unusual items. Can you tell me a little bit about those?
Sure. The photogrammetry kit came about through a partnership with USC, University of South Carolina.
Got it. Okay.
Their archaeology department needed 3D models of artifacts.
Got it. Okay.
And so they partner, so we do 3D printing through the Library of Things.
Yeah.
We do not let customers 3D print, they submit files and we 3D print for them. But through that program, they took a class on photogrammetry, which is basically taking an object and getting a 3D model of that object that you can then put into software and print 3D iterations of it. And so through that, USC provided the training for it, and we purchase the photogrammetry items to make the kit so that their students and people in the archaeology department could have a kit to use to actually do the work. I do
That
not
makes
know
sense.
how well it circulates. I haven't checked on statistics for that. I know it has circulated a few times because one time it came back and I had to fix something. So I know it has circulated, but I don't know how well it circulates. So then the mold press is it's this tool that is like, honestly, I don't know who uses it, but what it does essentially is it will mold plastic around an object.
Fascinating.
So I would suppose that you could use it to then make, molds that you could, I don't know, make candy with. But then I know that people also use it to package things. So like if they have a weirdly shaped item, you can make like a plastic case for it, essentially.
Yeah.
That does circulate, not incredibly well, but it gets a good amount of circulations per year because I did we're now at the point where we're talking about deascensioning items that don't circulate well. And so I ran statistics last year to kind of go over what has not, like you do on your collection, what hasn't checked out in the last 5 years kind of thing. So we did that with our collection to see what hasn't checked out well enough to consider it to maintain in the collection so that we could weed the collection and have fresher items go in. And in that, the mold press passed that threshold, which I think was 10 circulations in 2 years. So it's not crazy popular, but it checks out a decent bit. The hearing loops, however, have not checked out once, and that bums me out a little bit. Basically, what it is it is a tool that you basically can hook into a hearing aid. So if you are at like a speaking event, you can put that device closer to the speaker and it will project into hearing aids that like Bluetooth connect to it.
Cool.
So it's a very cool device. Unfortunately, most of the assistive technology that we have in the Library of Things does not circulate. I am trying to work on a plan to advertise them more because I think the issue is that people just don't know that it's there and don't know to ask for it. But yeah, so one of my friends just got into the state library as they're in their talking books. So I figured we could partner and kind of spread the word a little bit about the assistive technology that we have, and get it out. We actually got those through a partnership with the Seratoma Club. I think that's how you pronounce it. But we're trying.
Yeah, it's actually, I'd say it's a common problem among the libraries that we've talked to. Jean had a good thought to look for local partners to partner with on the assistant technology. Anyone I know who it's working really well, that's exactly what they have. As always, it's partnerships, right? But yeah,
Yeah, I think it's just
probably,
advertising. It's just
yeah.
people don't know that it's there and don't know what it would be used for.
Yeah, you don't know, you don't know what it is sometimes. And yeah, didn't know that such a thing existed.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so I guess we're always thinking about kind of ways to help people and help people scale. So if folks had questions or they wanted to take a look at your maintenance plans or something later on, would you be open to an email
Yeah.
or something? Okay.
Yeah, I'll share basically anything.
Okay, amazing. Because yeah, we have this listserv, and I know a lot of us have as we go into something new, it's really lovely to be able to be like, oh, someone's done it before. I will just do that, or maybe I'll tweak it a little bit. So not reinventing the wheel. Really appreciate you taking the time, Kelsey, and just amazing stuff you've done down there. really, I think you're leading the way with some of the stuff you're lending and how you're doing
Thank
it
you.
in multiple branches and with the maker spaces and also with the like checking it in for functionality. A lot of libraries are not doing that, so that's interesting to me. I might follow up with you on some things. So yeah, I've learned a lot as always, and you're lovely. So thank you so much for sharing today.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody have any last few questions before I go?
You're getting a lot of thank yous. Thank you for the insights, amazing collection. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, so I'm sure we all will as soon as we hit leave on this, but that's okay because we're gonna
Yeah.
let you have the rest of your Friday afternoon and see, hopefully no more code Gs is what we say. Code, which is gross here. So if it's a code G, we're like, we don't want to circulate anything with code Gs. All right.
I just put my email in the chat. If anybody has any questions later, by all means,
So
I am
amazing.
here.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelsey, and
Absolutely.
everyone for coming on. We couldn't do these if we weren't all together learning. So yay, thanks for being part of the team and contributing. Bye all.